program, a court released, I'm reading from this report, a court released testimony of one confidential informant in Atlanta who received $212,000 from the DEA. DEA has so many of these informants, by the way, from 2011 to 2013. She testified she wasn't sure why she was paid. That was her testimony. She also testified to a sexual relationship with the DEA group supervisor who allegedly convinced the subordinates to falsify reports to justify those payments. That case currently under review by the inspector general. So you have, just zero accountability about how these funds are actually being used, and very little investigation into whether this has actually been effective at preventing more crime than it's creating. And some of the tactics have been wildly abusive of entrapment and of helping create these plots and radicalizing individuals. We covered back on Rising the Herald Square bomber, quote unquote, who didn't subscribe to any sort of radical ideology. The FBI informant who's involved showed him, let me show you Abu Ghraib, let me talk to you about how America's evil, let me encourage you to be involved with this bombing plot. And so it's things like that you just wonder, is what exactly is being authorized in our name? What are our taxpayer dollars actually being used for? And so one of
interesting new comments. Dr. Anthony Fauci, after he was basically debased by Senator Rand Paul and has continually tried to redefine gain of function, has a new response when he's asked about it. Let's put this up there on the screen, which is that Fauci now says gain of function is now a, quote, completely meaningless term as he defends the NIH actions. Now, that's pretty important, Crystal, because gain of function was explicitly defined under his term in the United States government to mean something so that they did not do it. And NIH has now admitted to Congress in a recent letter that they did, in fact, fund gain of function research. They did not know, or they claimed they did not know, that it was happening, and they had to correct the record after Fauci had gone and testified there. So according to them, they did actually fund it. It does have a meaning. It had a meaning for a reason because we banned it. Fauci actually circumvented and eventually removed that ban under the Trump administration. And look, why does it all matter? I know it is tiresome in order to get into all of these debates. Technically, anything that enhances a virus is gain of function, so I get it. I've even heard from some people in the scientific community saying, hey, it's not all bad. I totally understand. What we're pointing to is that in this particular instance, at the Wuhan Institute of Virology, they were studying these bat coronaviruses, enhancing them, in some cases, doing it with U.S. government-provided dollars, and eventually, it's very likely that what we currently know as COVID-19 leaked from that lab as a result of this type of risky and dangerous research, of which that lab was cited for safety violations multiple times. We know all of this. It's totally public record. And it's all just about, did it come from the lab or did it not? It's very basic. And if it did, let's have a discussion around gain of function. Let's set some new safety standards. Let's maybe not do it at all. Maybe. I know the scientists will get mad whenever I say that. But it turns out, Crystal, that the reason Fauci doesn't want to admit any of this is because it would disrupt his role as the funneler of billions of dollars in scientific aid dollars, which if you talk to people in the community, scientific community, which I have, the NIH is like the kingmaker. They can make your lab or break your lab. A grant to them employs you, it employs all your people. If you're a tenured professor at one of these universities, you need the NIH or you need the National Science Foundation. These are the major granting institutions. So that's why a lot of people in the scientific community are also remaining silent about all of this. So his claim on this is ridiculous, and we should just pair it with the latest document leak at this point. Put this up there on the screen, please. New documents show that the Wuhan lab was studying a viral strain found in bats, which is, quote, near identical to COVID-19 in latest lab leak.
I'm sure that has nothing to do with it, Saga.
And Crystal,
preposterous.
As you and I have pointed to, the natural explanation for COVID is that this bat flew 1,000 miles from Laos. Well, it turns out that the people who were investigating gain of function research on bats got some of their bats from Laos, which is exactly where something called Banal 52, a Laotian bat virus, which shares 97% of its genome with SARS-CoV-2, just happens to be from. So now we even have evidence linking the Laotian 1,000-mile away bat to the actual research, which was happening at the lab. I mean, do you need much more people?
Roll
It's pretty clear.
roll the clip of
Yeah.
Jon Stewart.
Roll Jon Stewart. Yeah.
I mean, the Fauci thing is it's just obviously he doesn't want to get blamed for a pandemic. He's trying to cover his ass. Like, that's obviously what's going on. And his new comments, which credit to Mehdi Hassan for pushing him on this and bringing up, this was based on an Intercept report.
Mm-hmm.
They got their hands on linked documents. And so he was pushing him on, what those documents revealed about the type of research that was going on, the type of experiments that they were considering doing. And this is different than what Fauci has said in the past. In those exchanges with Rand Paul, he has tried to craft his own definition of gain of function and then say, therefore, what we were doing was not gain of function.
Right.
So now to just say, well, it's a meaningless term. Let's just not even talk about it at all. As you point out, I mean, it is a term that has a definition. It does have meaning. It is specified in terms of the regulatory code about what it is and what it isn't, what's permissible and what's not. So it does, in fact, have meaning. You just don't want to acknowledge that it has meaning because it's very inconvenient for you and it makes you look kind of bad. So it's very obvious what's going on here, but you don't hear a lot of willingness to question St. Fauci in a lot of corners of the media.
Right, yeah. We should ask him about this bat and see what he thinks.
Yeah.
See if the natural origin still makes a whole lot of sense.
I would be interested in hearing that.
Okay. All right. We'll have more for you guys later. Thanks for watching.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely on cut our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.
We got us a wrap. We were set. When let's go to the next block here because this is important and fits very much with it. I love these particular segments because every time that the news is forced to do something even slightly critical of Joe Biden or, just like tell the truth about what's happening in the country, their audience freaks out. So the segment you're about to see sparked a little bit of a backlash, but for once, in terms of the way that they presented that the way the country is feeling, NBC News and Chuck Todd did, they're reflecting their own poll results, and it was a very interesting segment to see how they present it. Let's take a listen.
Just 22% of adults say we're headed in the right direction. A shocking 71% say we're on the wrong track, and that includes a near majority of Democrats who are saying that. President Biden's approval rating stands at a dismal 42% versus 54% who disapprove. Believe it or not, just 2 months ago, Mr. Biden was in positive territory, 49% approving, 48% disapproving. So what's pulling down the president's numbers? Well, look at this set of numbers. Just 37% say he has the ability right now to handle a crisis versus nearly a majority who say he does not. 37% also say he's competent and effective as president. 50% disagree with that description. What's more, Republicans, believe it or not, have double-digit leads in dealing with border security, inflation, crime, national security, the economy, and shockingly, on getting things done. Democrats hold generally smaller double-digit leads on dealing with climate change, the coronavirus, education, and abortion. And that's really it right now.
That is pretty stunning there, Crystal, in terms of the actual breakdown. We'll delve into it a little bit more. But the most important part was actually pulled by Josh Kraushaar. Let's put his tweet up there on the screen. Another telling nugget from the NBC poll. just 18% of voters strongly approve of Biden's job, while a near majority, 46%, strongly disapprove. So his strong disapproves are actually higher than his overall approval rating. That's generally not a place that you want to be. And I would again point to the fact that he only has 18 points whenever he has a strong approval rating. And the reason why is that the 18 was never a place where Trump was. His strong approval rating was always almost in the 30s. And the reason why, as we have talked ad nauseum, the base of the Republican Party loved Trump in a way that they have not loved a figure since probably like Ronald Reagan. And people would, crawl through glass in order to vote for him. And you saw that in the way the enthusiasm numbers and more. Biden does not have that. That's what I'm going to be talking a lot about in my radar. And when you have that, now combined with Biden becoming a cultural opposition figure in his own right, really reviled by a lot of the American people, you are in for a recipe for total political disaster. And I am very, very, very reluctant to reach for the Jimmy Carter metaphors and all of that. But at this moment, right now, that is the territory, what it simply looks like in terms of the national mood, the lack of the enthusiasm, the ability for Republicans to just simply have massively high approval ratings on oppositional politics whatsoever. That takes a very bad politician in order to produce those types of conditions.
Yeah. I mean, it was okay for Biden when everyone sort of felt like, about him.
Yes, that's right.
That as a politician, you can kind of work with, right? You don't have people who are strongly motivated against you. You also don't have people who are strongly excited about you. Everybody just kind of got a general, he's fine, kind of a feeling. That was what he was able to use to win the presidency and to win the Democratic primary to start with, and then ultimately win the presidency, is that people didn't really have strong oppositional feelings. Mm-hmm. So now you have him becoming an actually divisive, hated figure on the right. And among the Democratic base, people are really not impressed. They're not feeling great about how things are going. And that is very much reflected in the fact that you have 71% of people saying the country is on the wrong track. I just feel like Democrats learned absolutely nothing from the Obama years. Mm-hmm. Absolutely nothing from the Obama years, because it is a very similar setup in a lot of ways. You had a huge crisis, right? You have a Democrat coming into office who has control of the White House, the Senate, and the House. You have this need to really do something dramatic to bring the country back, to make people feel like, okay, we're moving forward and things are heading in the right direction. We need a vision that we can hold on to. We need something that's going to make us feel like this country is on the up and up again. And instead, all you've seen in these past several months is floundering around, incompetence. He's very, he's not in front of the cameras a lot. When he is in front of the cameras, it's a lot less than inspiring. And the agenda itself has completely collapsed. I mean, I personally, as you guys know, think that progressives should vote down this piece of crap bill that we're about to talk about in just a moment. But even if they do, there's so little left in it that even if it ultimately does pass, there's so little left in it. What are people going to hang their hat on here? I mean, this is not going to, people are barely going to notice a difference, even if this supposedly large, significant bill that constitutes his agenda is ultimately passed. So it's pretty pathetic. Look, some of it is out of his control. There's only so much control you have over the pandemic, ultimately. Yeah. There's only so much control you have over the economy, ultimately, even though we tend to put it all on the president. But some of these things are in his control, and he's just failed to deliver. I mean, that's ultimately the bottom line. And anytime you have one party that has control of all the levers of power in Washington, the other party is going to get fired up. That's the normal ebb and flow of politics. They're pissed off because they're out of power and they want to see their values represented, and they don't feel like it's being right now. That's going to happen. So you've got to give your side something to feel excited about too. Something to feel like it's worth getting out of bed and fighting for these people and giving them a little bit of your hard-earned cash, giving them your vote, showing up to organize for you, all of that. There was a line in, I think, one of the articles about Virginia that was effectively like, Democrats really thought that Trump opposition equaled support for them.
That's right. That's exactly.
And it led them to overstate and indulge in sort of fantasy about how large and significant their base of support was. With Trump gone, now you see the bare bones of what people actually really think about this party writ large.
And take a look at this. Let's go and put Ryan Struck's tweet up there on the screen. New NBC News poll on which party is better on. So climate change, coronavirus, education, abortion, voting rights, and election security are all places where Democrats are above water. Now, immigration, the economy, national security, crime, inflation, and border security all have major Republican leads. But where my really eyes go to are the two of the economy and inflation, Crystal, because we know that the economy was already relatively tied with coronavirus amongst what is the most important thing for the National Party in order to reckon with. And that inflation then became the second most and equally tied with all three of these things in terms of what is on Americans' minds. So if you have Republicans leading at 24 points on the subject of inflation and 18 points on the subject of the economy, that is just going to simply drown out a 12-point lead that Democrats have on coronavirus. And it really does go to show where, you really are just, this is why our politics is so annoying, right? Which is that it swings between coronavirus on the one hand, economy on the other, inflation here, and that people seem to have to pick and choose kind of between the two parties. And nobody is kind of trying to offer what the other side wants. And it becomes a real gridlock in terms of the way that it actually manifests. But overall, the story is that and as even Chuck Todd said, getting things done is a place where Republicans are currently leading Democrats, which is, a shocking thing if you've ever been here in Washington. And you can see also why, many people were upset. But I was describing Mitch McConnell's tactics. I said, I think it makes perfect sense. People blame the president. They blame the party in power whenever they're there. Why should they have to worry about arcane Senate procedure or whatever? They're like, you guys are supposed to be the people running the country. You're not doing anything. All of it is just creating a complete political morass for the president and for the party in power.
Yeah, and let's not get it twisted. It's not that Republicans deserve support. It's not like they're doing anything or offering anything that would deal with any of these problems that people have. But right now, they're not in power. So when people feel like their lives aren't going well and they're frustrated with, the people who, at least in theory, have control of the country and the government, they're going to look for an alternative. And that's what we're seeing right now.
That's right.
Hey guys, thanks so much for watching.
That's right. Just as a reminder, you can become a premium subscriber today. Watch the full show completely uncut, our reactions to each other's monologues. You get to listen to it. You get to ask us questions, all that good stuff. Link is right there in the description or at breakingpoints.com.
Best of all, great way to say screw you to the mainstream media.
Moving on. Our main story tonight concerns homelessness, and I know that we are by no means the first show to cover this subject. Many have tried, and perhaps not more memorably than the criminally cancelled Tyra Banks show.
I wanted to understand what their lives are really like and walk a day in their shoes. No makeup, no lights, nothing but me on the street. I stopped at two kids in the street playing ball.
Hi. My name is Tyra. Hi. What's your name? Franklin.
I mean, there is so much going on there, but I want to focus on Franklin's face, because that is the face of a kid who's definitely figured out the secret identity of the woman who had a camera crew, looked like Tyra Banks, and introduced herself saying, "Hi, my name is Tyra." But despite Tyra's best efforts, homelessness is still a huge problem in this country. For the fourth consecutive year, it increased nationwide, with the most recent count suggesting there are over 580,000 people experiencing homelessness in America. But the truth is, it is likely way more than that, because that annual count only includes people that surveyors could find on the streets or in shelters on a single night last year, a system that misses countless people. And not just that, experts project the pandemic recession could cause chronic homelessness to increase 49% over the next 4 years. And with this rise in homelessness has come a corresponding rise in the rhetoric around it, exemplified by segments like this.
We came out to have some fun.
It's a great time. Everybody's safe.
It's America. It's my home.
This used to be one of the crown jewels of Austin, but as you can see, another tent city. A guy's walking around here with a machete, threatening people.
It started with box cutters as a weapon. Now we sadly would joke that we're the machete capital of Texas.
Okay, hold on. I'm not saying that someone walking around with a machete isn't scary, but you're making an outlier seem like the norm there, and you've gone out of your way to make it scarier with visual effects. And you can make anything frightening that way. Here, I'll show you. Here is a bit of fun. Just Shaquille O'Neal dancing with the Jabberwockies. Oh, God, oh, no, now it's terrifying. Leave him alone, Jabberwockies. Leave Shaq alone. Run, Shaq, just run. And look, I know it is easy to criticize Fox News for being alarmist. Alarmism is their whole thing. That and airing ads for pills that make your dick go bongo. But the truth is, even some residents of Austin, famously a blue dot in a red state, have said it's been a struggle to reconcile their feelings about their homeless neighbors.
Do you think if you had seen this issue happening in another city and it wasn't happening in your neighborhood, you would feel this?
My backyard. Once you're in the middle of it, you change your mind of how you approach the situation. But as your safety declines, so does your compassion. Every time I have to pick up human shit, my liberalness just got lowered one more notch.
Wow, that is very honest. Every time I have to pick up human shit, my liberalism gets lowered is quite the sentence. Although I'm surprised it was heard in this context and not in a leaked recording from an Amy Klobuchar staff meeting. And look, again, I am not saying that is a nice situation to be presented with, but far too often, stories focusing on homelessness are presented solely through the lens of how it affects those with homes, when in reality it is obviously the people without them who need the real help. And the demonization of the homeless community in Austin may well have contributed to incidents like this.
We had so many people throw glass bottles from their cars and at our tents and said, y'all white trash, y'all need to get a job, y'all need to get housing, y'all don't need to be out.
Y'all need to stop fucking people. Like, mind your fucking business.
This is technically our home.
Right. And that is obviously horrible, although I will say no one screaming out of a car window has ever said anything worthwhile. It's like giving a eulogy through flash mob. The method of delivery alone is just immediately disqualifying. The story of homelessness in this country is grounded in a failure of perception, compounded by failures of policy. So tonight, let's look at the way homelessness is talked about, how the problem is currently being made worse, and what could actually help. And like so many things, the modern version of this issue was turbocharged by Ronald Reagan, who came to power at a time when homelessness was increasing and made the problem far worse by cutting programs for the poor and slashing housing subsidies by 75%, making it pretty galling that Reagan regularly made arguments like this.
One problem that we've had even in the best of times, and that is the people who are sleeping on the grates, the homeless who are homeless, you might say, by choice.
I'm sorry, homeless by choice? Look, there were lots of things from 1984 that we could have used an undo button for. Long Dog Dong, most of Temple of Doom, this extremely unfortunate Jell-O ad. But Reagan's quarter-ass thoughts on homelessness are near the top of that list. And that notion that homelessness isn't related to economic policies, but simply reflects the problems of the individuals experiencing it, still informs the way it's discussed today. Here is Dr. Drew, of all people, talking to Seth Green, of all people, and pushing back on the notion that the homeless crisis in LA might have anything to do with a shortage of affordable housing.
This isn't a housing problem.
It's not?
No. That's a hoax. That's a hoax being perpetrated by the government here locally. They need to stop.
That there isn't, because it seems
Of
like...
course we have housing expense issues, but we just absorbed 1 million illegal undocumented immigrants without a home, without a country, without a job, without a penny. We absorbed them. They found a place to live. It's a hoax. So it's a mental health crisis and addiction crisis. Full on.
Oh, okay then. I certainly don't see why we wouldn't innately trust Dr. Drew confidently mouth-splooging bullshit theories to Dr. Evil's son, but a few notes on what he said there. Set aside the nonsense that undocumented immigrants don't experience homelessness, because experts will tell you that they very much do. They're just less likely to avail themselves of services because of the whole undocumented thing. Instead, let's address the notion that all of this is down to mental health and addiction, because yes, many who are homeless do struggle with both those things, and those people are often the most visible, but by no means all of them. Also, in many cases, those struggles can be the result of being homeless and not the cause of it. The truth is, there are many reasons someone might find themselves without housing: medical debt, job loss, fleeing domestic violence, being kicked out of their homes because their parents don't approve their sexuality, of being recently released from prison, or just the overriding fact that housing costs are rising much faster than wages. Currently, 70% of all extremely low-income families are spending more than half their income on rent, and only 37 affordable and available homes exist for every 100 extremely low-income renter households. And that is a startlingly low number, especially considering just how much this country loves watching TV shows about homes. Little homes, humongo homes, homes for ghosts, and homes remodeled by weirdo twins who definitely shower together, to name just a few of them. The point here is, it doesn't take much for people to suddenly find themselves without stable housing, as this woman found out.
2 years ago, Priscilla had a full-time job at a health clinic for the homeless. Her husband, Ryan, stayed home to care for their 2 sons. The youngest has severe autism. They lived on a tight budget, and then their landlord raised the rent $150.
That's a lot of money for a lot of people that live paycheck by paycheck, and we live like that.
The family was evicted, and in a place they never imagined, homeless themselves, living in their car.
I work at a homeless clinic and I'm homeless. How the heck does that happen to me?
Yeah, that is an awful situation to be in. You never want to find yourself suddenly saying, how did this happen to me? With the sole exception of being if you are knee-deep in Stanley Tucci's sheets. And even then, why question it? You're swimming in Tucci, Peppermint. This is going to be a delight. So despite Reagan's confidence, there can be not much choice in the matter after all. As for those outward signs of homelessness that raise such alarm, they are typically the result of public policy choices that we have made. Remember that woman complaining about human shit? That is actually a common thread in coverage of the homeless. In LA, you can find multiple stories about human feces near homeless encampments. But it's worth knowing there is a reason for that.
Most of the city's hundreds of encampments are nowhere near a public toilet. In fact, LA has only 16 mobile toilet stations for its 36,000 homeless people. To make matters worse, with no funding for round-the-clock security, the city hauls away these toilets at night, leaving the homeless no choice but to go on the streets.
What the fuck to all of that? From the amount of public toilet stations available being less than the amount of Bond movies, to shuffling those very minimal toilets away like they're going to turn into a pumpkin at midnight. And while that clip is from just before the pandemic, which prompted city officials to increase toilet stations, there are still currently only 55 accessible 24/7. So the next time you complain about human shit in the street, maybe think about what it would be like if someone padlocked your bathroom every night. You too would suddenly be getting really creative really fast. And it seems the impulse behind many local policies surrounding unhoused people isn't so much to help them as to punish them for their existence and keep them out of sight. You're probably familiar with hostile architecture designed to prevent homeless people from sitting and lying on certain property. It's why you'll sometimes see spikes under bridges like this, or benches with dividers to prevent anyone lying down. And one city went even beyond architecture.
Debate raging over a Florida city playing children's music at a park pavilion at night to keep homeless people away. People say the music rotates between Baby Shark and this song.
It's raining tacos. Raining tacos.
It's true. They pumped the song Raining Tacos at people when they were just trying to sleep, which is completely inhumane. Nobody deserves that. Also, and I know this isn't the key point, that song doesn't deserve it either, because it is a certified banger. Take a listen.
It was raining tacos out in the street. Tacos, all you can eat. Lettuce and shells, cheese and meat. It's raining tacos. Yum, 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 yum.
Stop. I would love to play you more, but the problem is this show would then get too fun, and I'd spend the rest of the show dancing in the aisles with you, and Ellen would literally kill me. But it is not just spikes and songs. More and more city ordinances have been put into place criminalising behaviours associated with being homeless. Over the course of 13 years, citywide bans on camping have increased by 92%, on sitting or lying by 78%, on loitering and panhandling by 103%, and on living in vehicles by 213%. So when you hear fear-mongering about rising crime among the homeless, it's worth asking yourself if those crimes were actually crimes or just someone sat down. Take Kenneth Schultz, a 71-year-old homeless man who told reporters, "Sometimes I just get exhausted and boom, sit down, that's it, you're trespassing." In the 9 years he's been homeless, he's been charged with trespassing 96 times and has spent one of every 3 nights in jail. And think about what that means. It means he spent 3 of the last 9 years behind bars. In what way is that man being helped? You cannot arrest someone out of homelessness in the same way that you can't sing someone out of bankruptcy. One thing doesn't remotely lead to the other, and you're just going to end up making things worse, even if you're singing this. Nope, turn it off. I am warning you, Ellen is sharpening her knives as we speak. She'll do it. It won't be the first time. And criminalising homelessness exposes already vulnerable populations to unnecessary interactions with the police. Unhoused people of colour are more likely to be cited, searched, and have property taken than white people experiencing homelessness, and those with multiple marginalised identities like LGBTQ+ people of colour are even more vulnerable to these laws. And if you're thinking, well, hold on, why don't homeless people just go to shelters? There can be a lot of problems with that. Some cities simply don't have enough beds for everyone. In Oakland, for example, in 2019, there were 457 beds available for more than 4,000 unhoused people, meaning they couldn't provide everyone with a bed, even if they Willy Wonkered the situation. And if I may, I'd actually like to pause at this point for just a quick tangent. So put 40 seconds on the clock, please. Regarding this, I don't mind Charlie's grandparents sleeping in one bed. Everyone always asks, but what about when they have to fuck? Do they fuck separately or all do it together? To which I say, I don't care, and I hope so. They're not related by blood, they're related by their children's marriage. It's not their fault they have to share one rickety bed. Grandpa George is going to want to make love to Grandma Georgina. They've shared a life together, and Grandpa Joe is obviously going to want to get it in Grandma Josephine. That's the mother of his children, but at a certain point, if you don't invite the couple sleeping in the same bed to join in, it is just rude. So the next time you talk shit about Charlie Bucket's elder sexual proclivities, ask yourself this: are they the problem, or were you just raised in a puritanical society that shames any sexual deviation from the quote-unquote norm? Oh, that's my time. That's my time. I've said my piece. Back to the sad stuff. The point is, some cities don't have enough shelter beds, and even in those that have many, like here in New York, they are not always an option for everyone. Some might not want to split up their family or part with their pets, or are simply wary of bringing their only possessions around a room full of strangers. But also, the key problem with saying, why don't people just go to shelters, is that shelter only a stopgap solution, because you don't live in a shelter, you just sleep in one, as this woman points out.
It's very, very rough. I would rather stay on the streets. And this is why I understand when I see a lot of homeless people, why they're on the streets. Shelter degrades you. I work part-time. I went from a full-time job to a part-time job being in the shelter because there's just too much going on. I have to be in at 8 o'clock every night. Yeah. If I'm not in at 8 o'clock, I lose that bed. You wake up at 5 o'clock, you have to be out of there at 7 o'clock, regardless.
Yeah. An 8 p.m. curfew and a 7 a.m. kick out the door. So if pulling yourself up by your bootstraps involves working nights, I'm sorry, you're shit out of luck. And if you're thinking, no, John, surely a shelter eventually helps people get back on their feet. Everything worthwhile in life takes time. I read that on a pillow once. Well, think again, because just look what happened when the person who filmed that woman caught up with her almost 8 years later.
You talked about going in and out of the shelter system. And that's still happening.
And that's still happening. They place you, they let you go. They move you, they let you go. They get your money from the government, they let you go, and you're still misplaced.
Yeah, the shelter system has done nothing to change her circumstance. And I will be the first to admit here, it's impossible for me to understand just how hard that cycle is. I've been lucky enough to have always lived in an apartment or a house, or most recently, an infinite white void run by an abusive landlord. That was hard in its own way, but it was nothing compared to a potentially life or death game of musical beds. So if all we've mentioned so far tonight, poking homeless people with spikes, blasting them with music and locking them up, doesn't solve this problem, what does? Well, this housing advocate has a bold new idea.
The solution is simple. This is what the solution is. It's the only thing that is homelessness. Is this right here, house keys.
Exactly. House keys. In other words, give the homeless homes. It's the solution you've probably been shouting at your TV for the past 15 minutes, or let's be honest, shouting at your laptop, or if we're being really honest, shouting at your phone during your Monday morning shit. And if you are annoyed that I wasted your time taking the scenic route here, let me make it up to you with another excellent clip from the Tyra Banks show. There is some context for that, but the truth is it honestly wouldn't make much more sense. Now, some will say, sure, giving the homeless homes is an obvious solution, but before that, they need to be sober and have a job. But it's just not that simple. Set aside that dealing with sobriety or your mental health issues is hard enough when you are not living on the streets. Getting a job is often, if not contingent on, at least aided by having an address. That is why advocates endorse an approach called Housing First. It prioritizes helping people get a place to live, but also offer support like mental health and addiction services. We've actually tried a version of this with homeless veterans before, and it had some real success.
The first step of this new model is a permanent house, funded mostly at government expense, with services then added around the resident. It's called permanent supportive housing, and that's what Lendl C. found himself in. C lives in this complex that houses only formerly homeless veterans. While there is no firm program that he has to follow, he has access to support services, including on-site case managers, mental health counseling, substance abuse treatment, and even a community garden.
It feels good. Sometimes I walk around the apartment, no TV or nothing on it, just singing for no reason at all. And then I catch myself doing it and I start to laugh. And I say, you must be going crazy now. But I'm just happy. It feels good.
That is a very nice thing to see. It's like two babies hugging or four grandparents absolutely railing each other. It's something that just fills you with hope. And thanks to this Housing First strategy, the number of homeless veterans dropped from 74,000 in 2010 to 38,000 in 2018, a near 50% reduction. And supportive housing is just one version of what this can look like. For those recently made homeless, rapid rehousing provides short-term rental assistance and services to help people get back on their feet quickly. And look, Housing First programs clearly require significant resources and funding, but it is not like our current approach is cheap. One study in Florida that tracked a decade's worth of spending on just 107 chronically homeless people found that just between money spent on incarceration and emergency medical treatment, their communities and local governments have spent an average of just over $31,000 per person per year, when the estimated cost of providing with permanent supportive housing would have only been around $10,000 per year. So if your argument against housing for the homeless was purely monetary, congratulations, your concerns have been answered. Also, a pre-congratulations for being visited by 3 ghosts this upcoming Christmas Eve. But funding is not the only issue here. A huge obstacle in implementing these sorts of programs is opposition from local residents. It is the NIMBY problem, not in my backyard, and it happens absolutely everywhere. Take Claremont, California, where new developments offering affordable housing, including those geared to the homeless, were proposed, only to encounter fierce community pushback like this.
You don't need to put it in our backyard. It's not fair.
Well, what they're doing is past crazy.
Well, it's just going to go